what led to the catastrophic event of Air India Flight 812 crash? This is a question that has haunted aviation experts and the families of the victims for years. On a seemingly ordinary day, May 22, 2010, a routine flight from Dubai to Mangalore turned into one of the deadliest aviation disasters in Indian history. Air India Flight 812, a Boeing 737-800, was carrying 158 souls on board. Their journey ended abruptly in the hilly terrain of Mangalore, India, where the plane crashed and broke into pieces. The debris was scattered across the landscape, a chilling reminder of the lives lost in an instant. The wreckage spoke volumes of the horror that unfolded in the early hours of the morning. The crash was not just a catastrophic event, but a turning point in the aviation industry. It brought about grave questions about safety standards, pilot training, and oversight within the industry. But what led to this catastrophic event? And why did a routine flight from Dubai to Mangalore end in such devastation? The investigation revealed a series of critical errors that ultimately led to the crash of Flight 812. This statement is far from an overstatement. The series of miscalculations and missteps that led to this catastrophic event began long before the plane ever left the ground. Pilot error was a significant factor in the crash. The experienced commander of the aircraft had logged over 10,000 flight hours, but on this fateful day, fatigue and overconfidence clouded his judgment. According to the investigation findings, he disregarded several alarms and warnings from the aircraft systems, a clear indication of an over-reliance on manual control and a dismissal of automated safety measures. The co-pilot, on the other hand, though less experienced, was noted to have shown signs of apprehension during the flight. Unfortunately, he failed to assertively communicate his concerns to the commander, a critical lapse in crew coordination. This lack of effective communication and assertiveness is often a result of a hierarchical culture within the cockpit, where the commander's decisions are rarely questioned. In addition to these errors, there were evident inadequacies in training. Flight 812's crew had received standard training, but it appears it wasn't enough to equip them with the skills needed to handle the emergency they faced that day. The training didn't sufficiently emphasize the importance of adhering to standard operating procedures and respecting the aircraft's warning systems. Moreover, the training did not adequately prepare the crew for the challenging conditions of Mangalore's tabletop airport, which is surrounded by deep valleys. The airport requires precision landing, leaving no room for the slightest miscalculation. As Flight 812 approached Mangalore Airport, the series of errors culminated in a fatal mistake. The pilots, possibly disoriented and under immense pressure, descended below the minimum safe altitude. Despite the aircraft's repeated warnings, they continued their descent, failing to maintain proper situational awareness, a fundamental principle of aviation safety. The stage was set for the tragedy, and it was only a matter of time before disaster struck. They descended below the minimum safe altitude, failing to maintain proper situational awareness. In the early hours of the morning of May 20th, 2021, Flight 812 crashed into a ravine, breaking apart upon impact. The chilling screams of the doomed passengers were swallowed by the deafening roar of the crash as the Boeing 737-800 violently met its end. The once mighty bird of steel was reduced to a mangled mass of debris strewn across the unforgiving landscape of the ravine. Rays of dawn revealed a scene of utter devastation. The aircraft, which was once a symbol of human ingenuity and the freedom to traverse the skies, now lay in ruins. It was the 18th of September, a date that would forever be etched in the annals of aviation disasters. The fuselage was shattered, its contents spewed across the rugged terrain. Seats, luggage, personal belongings, and the remnants of human lives were scattered the crash site, painting a grim picture of the tragedy that had unfolded. Emergency services were quick to respond, rushing to the scene in a desperate bid to find survivors. Brave men and women battled the rugged terrain, navigating the treacherous ravine under the weight of their heavy rescue equipment. Every second counted in this race against time as they sifted through the wreckage, hoping against hope to find signs of life. Despite their heroic efforts, the rescuers were met with a heart-wrenching sight bodies of the passengers and crew members. The rugged terrain proved to be a formidable adversary, hindering rescue efforts and adding to the already immense challenge faced by the brave rescuers. In the midst of this grim task, the rescuers displayed dedication to their duty. Their relentless efforts, despite the daunting challenges, were a testament to the human spirit's resilience in the face of adversity. Their courage and commitment served as a beacon hope amidst the despair. As the sun set on that fateful day, the full scale of the devastation was laid bare. The crash site was a stark reminder of the tragic events of the morning, a silent testament to the lives lost in the of an eye. The wreckage was scattered across the rugged terrain, making rescue efforts difficult. Yet, in the face of such adversity, the human spirit persisted, echoing the resolve to keep pushing forward, to learn from our past, and to ensure that such a tragedy never happens. In the aftermath of the crash, questions were raised about safety standards and oversight within the aviation industry. The devastating loss of 158 lives triggered a wave of scrutiny that rippled through every corner of the aviation world. Central to this maelstrom of questioning was Air India. The national carrier came under the spotlight, its practices and protocols dissected and examined under a microscope of public accountability. The glare was particularly intense on the perceived inadequacies in training protocols and management of pilot fatigue. Critics argued that these systemic flaws contributed significantly to the disaster. The voices grew louder, demanding that Air India and indeed all airlines take a hard look at themselves and make necessary changes to ensure the safety of passengers. Yet, the outcry was not limited to the realm of aviation experts and industry insiders. The families of the victims, their lives irrevocably shattered by the tragedy, raised their voices too. They demanded justice for their lost loved ones. They sought answers and accountability. Their grief was not private, but a shared national anguish that echoed through the corridors of power. Their demands were simple, yet profound. They called for an urgent reassessment of safety standards, for a renewed emphasis on training and fatigue management. They insisted on better oversight, on stricter regulations, but most importantly, they demanded that human lives be placed above all else, above profit and above expediency. The tragedy of Air India Flight 812 was not just a single event. It was a catalyst, a wake-up call that reverberated across the globe. It underscored the harsh reality that the aviation industry despite its technological advances, was still vulnerable to human error and systemic failures. The aftermath of the crash was not just about grieving and mourning. It was about learning, about making changes. It was about ensuring that the lives lost were not in vain. And so, the families of the victims, and indeed the world, demand justice for the victims of Flight 812. Airlines must prioritize safety above all else. As the world mourned the loss of those on board Flight 812, the aviation industry vowed to learn from the mistakes of the past. In the wake of the Air India Flight 812 disaster, the aviation industry underwent a significant transformation. A renewed focus on safety, training, and regulation became the cornerstone of this change, aiming to prevent such tragedies from recurring. The first major change was in the area of pilot training. Recognizing that the human factor played a critical role in the Flight 812 crash, airlines globally began to invest heavily in advanced simulation technologies. These simulators allowed pilots to practice handling challenging flight scenarios, thereby improving their decision-making skills and responses to potential in-flight emergencies. Next came an overhaul of safety measures. Airlines, regulators, and aircraft manufacturers worked in unison to introduce more rigorous checks and balances. These included enhanced maintenance protocols for aircraft, stricter flight duty time limitations to combat pilot fatigue, and the adoption of safety management systems, a proactive approach to managing safety risks. Moreover, there was a notable shift in the regulatory landscape. Authorities worldwide tightened their oversight, implementing stricter regulations for airlines. These new rules varied from more stringent pilot licensing requirements to mandatory installation of advanced safety equipment in aircrafts. Notably, there was a push for greater transparency, with airlines now required to share safety-related data with regulators. Yet, amid these changes, it was clear that the industry's evolution was not just about new rules or technologies. It was about fostering a culture of safety. From the boardroom to the cockpit, the commitment to safety became paramount, with everyone in the aviation ecosystem understanding their role in maintaining it. These changes, although triggered by a tragic event, have undoubtedly made aviation safer. They serve as a constant reminder of the lessons learned from Flight 812 and the importance of never taking safety for granted. Improved training, enhanced safety measures, and stricter regulations were implemented to prevent similar tragedies in the future. This commitment to continuous improvement ensures that the aviation industry keeps moving forward, always striving to be safer than the day before. May the memory of those lost in the Air India Flight 812 tragedy forever live on in our hearts. In the wake of such a tragedy, we are reminded of the preciousness of life and the strength of the human spirit. As we reflect on the lives lost, we do so not in sorrow, but in celebration of their lives and the indelible mark they left on this world. Mothers, fathers, siblings, children, friends, colleagues, each one a unique soul, each one a profound loss. But in this loss, we find unity. In our shared grief and our collective determination to ensure their lives were not lost in vain. We remember them not for their tragic end, but for the lives they lived, the joy they brought, and the love they shared. The flickering candles at the vigil symbolize their enduring light, a poignant reminder that their spirit remains with us, illuminating our path forward. May the memory of those lost in the Air India Flight 812 tragedy forever live on in our hearts.